This is Henri Akoka. He was born in 1912 to a Jewish family in Algeria. That's here, in northern Africa. And when Henri was 6, his dad packed it up and moved here, to France. They moved somewhere up here, I think. Henri's dad really wanted him to become a musician, like this guy, or this guy, or maybe even this guy. So he did, and he chose this thing, the clarinet. Henri played this thing professionally for most of his life. This is Timothy Mueller. He's a professional musician too, and he has a music degree, so he knows what he's talking about. And he's my dad. Aww. He's gonna help me tell Akoka's story. What story is that, you might be asking? Well, you're gonna find out. This is the story of Henri Akoka.
This morning, the British ambassador in Berlin handed the German government a final note. I have to tell you now that no such undertaking has been received, and that consequently this country is at war with Germany.
So World War II started. Henri was already a really good clarinetist at this point. He went to the Paris Conservatory, and then he played in a prestigious radio symphony orchestra in France until the war started and he was drafted. But thankfully for him, he wasn't drafted onto the battlefield.
And he was assigned to an orchestra in the army. Well, in this case, it was a military theater orchestra. So apparently they did theater shows that used the orchestra. It sounded like it was, it had a good sense of camaraderie among the many musicians in the group. And that's where he met Olivier Messaien.
So this is Olivier Messaien. He was a composer, he wrote classical music, and he was very famous.
Messaien was kind of reserved. He was a very religious person, and raised Roman Catholic and very religious. Akoka was from a Jewish family, and he was very energetic and outgoing and apparently had a really good sense of humor. And somehow they really hit it off.
So Henri and Messaien were friends now. Then they met some other musicians, including Etienne Pasquier, a cellist, and Jean Le Boulaire, a violinist. We'll come back to all this later. For now, though, let's take a walk.
Messaien really knew everything about birds and bird songs. So he would take Henri and the cellist and these other people out to the forest and tell them to be quiet and just listen. And so there would be one bird, and then another bird would respond. And then eventually there would be 3 or 4. This whole group of birds would start having a conversation first thing in the morning. And this is like a ritual that they would do. And then they're captured by the Nazis. They were forced to march 40 miles or something, and this march was terrible. They had no food, no water, basically. The cellist, who was a friend of his, and also Messaien, were at times really struggling physically to get to do this march. Henri would hold him up so he could walk. They walked 40 miles to Nancy, and then they took a train, I guess, to Silesia, to Görlitz, which is where the POW camp was. First of all, It's not a concentration camp. I guess we all assume that the Nazis put everybody in these horrible places. But this was a prisoner of war camp to keep combatant soldiers from France from fighting against the Nazis. So they were treated with, they were fed and had a bed to sleep in. And
This is the only picture I could find of all of the musicians together in the POW camp. They all don't look too happy, but at least they're together. For now, anyways. You remember Messaien, right? The famous composer? Well, even though he was in a POW camp, he still wrote music. And then, one day, he brought Henri into a field and gave him some music to play.
Messaien first showed Akoka the piece he had written for him. And so Messaien says, here, play this. And Henri said, well, I don't think I can play this. And besides, I don't have a music stand. So the cellist holds the music for him. And he starts to play it. It's quite difficult, and he says to Messaien, I don't think I can play that. And Messaien says, oh yeah, you can, I know you can. So he continues, and that was the first time that he played the music that was written for him. And at that point, they came across one of the prison guards, Albert Brühl, who loved music and who also hated the Nazis. I think it was the cellist realized that the qualification that worked for everybody was if you were an orderly or a medical person, then you were qualified to be released. None of the musicians was that. So he went to Brühl and they forged some documents, apparently stamped, with a stamp made out of a potato. But then, as they were leaving, one of the soldiers stopped Akoka and said, no, you're not leaving, you're Jewish.
So all of Henri's musician buddies got to escape, but he was kept behind. Imagine that. You're this close to freedom, but then you're stopped by something as simple as the way you look.
But he never, apparently his family always said he never got discouraged, he never lost hope. And he was always trying to break free. He was in a train car full of prisoners. He was designated as the captain of the group in the train car. And the idea was that if anybody escaped, the captain would be shot and killed. But it was at that point that he decided he was going to escape. And so he convinced some of the people around him to help him get up to the roof of the car. And so he loosens some panels in the roof of the car. At some point he jumps off the train.
Henri successfully escaped the Nazis. He returned to his family in France after the war ended and continued to play the clarinet until his death in 1975. Henri remains a folk hero among clarinetists and a symbol of hope and bravery for all those who know his story. Thank you, and goodbye, Henri Akoka.